So, Amy, it's
Yeah.
live, so go ahead.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining today. As you know, we are the ad hoc committee to kind of help make a little bit more sense of the transportation improvement program that is presented to us for the benefit of our committee. I guess we will call the meeting to order. I've never officially done that, but we'll do that. And then I guess just so we're familiar with everybody, we'll go through a quick introduction. I'll start. Amy Espinosa, I'm the committee chair, and I hold the at-large seat representing women for the CAC.
I'll jump in. I'm Terrence Trott. Happy to be taking this up with Amy on the committee. I'm the at-large African-American representative. Good morning, everybody. Afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Beatrice, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Beatrice Safra. I'm the at-large representative for under 30.
Then I see Carolyn.
Good afternoon, everyone. I represent Commissioner Ms. Myers. I new to this, so ask for patience. I'm still learning. But yeah, Carolyn Brown representing for Commissioner Quinn Myers.
Great, thank you. And then I see David has joined us. So David, if you can hear us and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, David Bailey here. I was appointed to the board by Commissioner Ken Hagan. I think I will be changing my appointment status. I hope that's correct, Rich.
Yeah, I think you were actually reappointed already by Commissioner Kimberly Overman.
Overman. Okay, perfect, excellent. So,
Yeah.
Hey, hello everyone.
Official.
Thank you.
And let's see. Also with us, I see Johnny Wong. Johnny, you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Morning or afternoon, everyone. Sorry. Johnny Wong, Hillsborough MPO. I am managing the TIP production this year.
Great. And Cheryl, I see you on.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Cheryl Wilkening, MPO staff, admin.
And Priya, just so everybody knows, you're working behind the scenes. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, this is Priya Nagraj. I'm with the Planning Commission IT support.
Great. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so.
All right. Okay, well, moving on in the agenda then, per the MPO bylaws, as usual, we're asked to speak for recognition. This is such a small group, I don't think we'll have any trouble. And then we also need to open up for public comment. Is there any public comment?
I don't see anybody in the list of attendees who hasn't already been introduced, so I don't think so.
Okay, awesome. Moving forward then, just a few housekeeping things. You know, I know some of us have been on the committee for a while, and some of us are new. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we feel like this is a safe and inclusive environment. None of us all have the answers. You know, I've been on the committee for at least 2 terms now, and I still don't understand a lot. So no question is dumb at all. What we're looking for is, for this meeting, is open and honest feedback, and you know, don't be shy to feel a little vulnerable, because I think we all do. So with that, I will get started. Just to reiterate, one of the reasons why I felt like we should get this committee together was to come together to identify information specific to the transportation improvement plan. This meeting happens usually in June. The MPO, since I've been on the committee, has been great about introducing a workshop in May to where we get an early peek into what is the projects that are planning to be included in the TIP. And then we have a forum to answer any open questions that we might have. What I'm trying to figure out or put forth with this effort is to also see what other information can help our committee understand the TIP better, to make sure that we get the questions we have answered and also understand the process before we are asked to vote on it a little bit better. I think Sarah McKinley did it last year. Johnny, I'm happy to see your face too this year. But I think, you know, they do their best job trying to answer questions that we have, and we usually have a lot. So what I'm hoping to do is just bring forth a little more clarity up front, perhaps with something that we can augment the workshop that the MPO puts on for us. So does anybody have any questions? Is that clear about what, you know, the whole concept behind this is? All right. Okay, so moving forward, one thing I want to note here is, even though we are focused on the TIP, I think we should keep an open dialogue and conversation to see if maybe we want to expand beyond that as we go, because, you know, there's 3 major work programs that we are presented throughout the year. One of them, did everybody read their cookbook? Do you guys remember the cookbook that we got as a new member of the committee? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's called the Citizen's Guide to
Citizen.
the MPO, but it's in the form of a little cookbook.
Yeah, are you guys familiar with that? Yes? No?
Vaguely.
Okay,
Okay,
well,
no quiz involved, so
no, there's no. I'm just really figuring out whether I should try and do a primer. So I'll kick it off, and then Rich and Johnny, feel free to jump in if I'm misguided. So what does the MPO do? Again, they have the 3 programs that they usually bring to us to vote on each year for with respect to sending it forward to the MPO. One is the Unified Planning Work Program. That one, I believe, happens in August, September. Is that right, Rich?
well, so yeah, I mean, it typically happens, it starts in February, and you know, we present it to the committees in April, and it's adopted by the MPO in May, but it happens every other year, so it's not an annual thing.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember about that one. The next one is the Long Range Transportation Plan, which that one I'm pretty sure happens every fall. Is that correct?
Well, it is in the fall, but again, it's not an annual thing. It's on a 5-year cycle, so
Right.
we don't update it every year. We are held to updating it every 5 years, and the last time it was adopted was November of 2019, so we'll be back at it in November of 2024.
Okay, and that one is basically a 20-year program.
Yes.
it lists projects 20 years out in the future. And then the last one that is in that list is the transportation improvement plan. So I just kind of wanted to make everyone aware of the other two. And then the transportation improvement program is what identifies, prioritizes, and then allocates funding for transportation for 5 years. This one, I believe, is updated annually. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And so that's the one that is kind of coming up.
I see Terrence has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Terrence.
Thank you. I don't know if you're going to get into it, but can you, how does the tentative work program and the list of priority projects like fit into that?
Yeah, so great question. Do you want me to take that one?
Yes,
Amy?
please.
All right, so let me just do a couple things here. First, I'll answer your question, and then I'll share my screen, okay? So the list of priority projects is part of the Transportation Improvement Program. It's part of the TIP. And it's really just a list of projects that are not funded yet, but are looking to be funded. So we put that together, based on your input and the input that we hear from the city and the cities and the county, Hart, others, based on what their priorities are. And we present it sort of in a top to bottom, I think it goes down to about 52 separate listings, categorized in different ways, but basically a top to bottom list. That's adopted as part of the TIP, and then it goes to the Department of Transportation, the Florida DOT, and they will take that and try to allocate funding to those candidate projects that are looking to be funded. So they take it pretty seriously, and so do we. They will come back to us, and all of this happens on an annual cycle. So, the list of priority projects is part of the TIP, which normally comes before you in like May and gets considered by the MPO in June, and then DOT will take that information and come back to us later in the year, towards the end of the year, with something called a tentative work program, which is basically their response to our TIPs. So, their response to our list of priority projects. So it's sort of an iterative thing. We provide the list of priorities to the department, and they come back with their what they call a tentative work program, which is, I would say, makes up at least half of the TIP document. It's a long list of all the projects that DOT thinks they can fund over the next 5 years, including, we hope, at least some of those priority projects. And then, that gets folded into our next TIP. So it's kind of a never-ending cycle. And, once the tentative work program is approved by the legislature and the governor, it becomes the final work program, and it goes into effect the next July 1. So that's kind of the cycle. And if you don't mind, let me just see if I can share my screen here. Can everybody see that slide? It says MPO products. Okay, good. So Amy's already talked us through this, so I don't probably need to spend too much time on it. The only other thing that's listed here is congestion management, which we don't need to go in today. This comes right out of the orientation slides that I think I showed almost everybody who joins the CAC. So some of this may be familiar to you, but I think it's probably worth going over again. See if I can go forward here. Can everybody see the next slide? It says the 2045 long range transportation plan. Okay, good. So as I said, this was adopted back in November of 2019 and gets updated every 5 years. It's important because it identifies on a 20-year basis, what are some of the major projects that we hope to get funded over the next 20 years. This is just sort of a listing of some of the projects that have been funded in the past and are now getting, in line to get funding. It's important because it conveys our priorities for federal and state funding up to the state and federal levels to Tallahassee and Washington, D.C. So they regard it as our statement of, what we intend to do with the federal and state dollars to come to this area. It also tries to look at all transportation needs, whether or not we think we're going to have funding for them. I'm going to skip this one for the moment, but I will return to performance-based planning in a minute. So this is another question that I think we often get, and I think understandably might be a little confusing for people, but how does a long-range plan fit with other efforts? So local comprehensive plans, these are, for the most part, land use and other non-transportation plans that are produced by the cities and the county. Sort of determines, where is growth going to take place. So we don't really, as an MPO, we don't have a decision making on that, but we do try to take that information and figure out, what facilities will be needed to accommodate that growth. And that's what the long range 20-year transportation plan is all about. Will federal funds be used? If they are, then any project that is in line for federal funding needs to go into our transportation improvement program, the 5-year TIP. So the 5-year TIP really is the first 5 years of that 20-year long range plan. So it's kind of a subset of projects in the TIP. And then last but not least, who builds or operates what and starting when. This is where the 5-year DOT work program comes in. There are also local governments, 5-year capital improvement programs. HART has a 10-year transit development plan. THEA, which is the Expressway Authority, has a work program of its own. And so does TBARTA, the Regional Transit Authority. And we try to make sure that, we are covering all of those, or at least taking into account their needs. And to the extent that they're using state and federal funding, it shows up in the TIP. So I probably droned on long enough about that, but if there's questions, try to answer them.
That was great. Thanks for that. That was important.
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to go for here is, what is it that information that you feel, and this is to people who have been on the committee for a while or people new to the committee, that is like lacking that could help you understand this a little bit better, I guess. And I know that's a very open-ended, broad question. You may not know, but I figured I'd ask and just see about starting a conversation to address those questions.
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Is this David? Yes,
Yes.
go for it.
You know, one of the things that I find that is difficult whenever we're in the meetings, an understanding of kind of the projects and the funding and looking at the tip, especially for some of the new people. I know when I was new, understanding, looking at the tip and understanding the projects within the tip was probably one of the biggest things for me to get used to, because you're hit with it and right before the meeting, and you have to absorb all of that information. So in my opinion, if we could, even if we're looking at the previous tip from the year before, just to introduce maybe some of the newer members, and so that they get familiar with the tip, and maybe discussing that and discussing some of the benefits of the project, spending more time on understanding what's going into the tip, I think is a important issue. We spend maybe just a meeting, and we may have a meeting prior to that meeting before we vote. So for me, being able to spend more time on the tip, understanding the projects that are involved in the tip, I think is vital to, voting on what should happen and what should happen. So if we could some way, and I guess that's the point of this board or this subcommittee, is to streamline that for the committee, and maybe have more meetings prior to having to vote on it, so that everybody can understand what's going into that tip is important. And then the other thing I see on here, where will growth be, with Rich's slide. I think that understanding the demographics of Hillsborough County is important. We are making decisions on growth and transportation, but half the time, I don't think some of the members or even some of the public understand kind of where the growth is and why we need certain projects to be done. And we're voting on this. We're voting, for the MPO to vote on whatever projects. And so I think we need to understand where that growth is. So having a discussion where the growth is and why certain projects are more important than others is a conversation we need to have as well. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, sorry, I'm catching up with my notes.
I was talking fast. I apologize.
No, you're good.
And Amy, when you're ready, when you're caught up, I'd like to add also, please.
Go for it, Sharon.
I would just mention for Amy's benefit and anybody else trying to take notes, this meeting is being recorded, so we can always go back and, replay the tape if you miss something.
Oh.
Perfect.
Good note. Thanks for the reminder. Go ahead, Terrence.
Yeah, so just from my perspective, one of the things that I just want to make sure that I kind of understand, and I guess that we can bring back to the committee also, is should we be looking at, or how is the priority list kind of determined? Is it safety first because, Vision Zero kind of, so safety's first, then state of good repair type items second, or legal things first, things we have to maybe comply with legally is first, then revenue generating? Like, is there an order? To me, there is, but is there one that, is looked at comprehensively kind of for determining the priorities? And then, that leads to how we make decisions on what we think should be elevated in the priority list.
Okay. And Terrence, just for clarification, I feel like you're tying those back to, and forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, Rich and Johnny, but there's program buckets, like there's state of good repair, there's Vision Zero. What are those called again? What's the?
Well, yeah, I'll let Johnny weigh in, but you got it right, Amy. In the long range plan, we divided projects up sort of into what we call investment categories or buckets, really, if you will. It's allocations of funding, future dollars to certain program areas. And I'll just say, so that people kind of have a good understanding, when I first joined the MPO, we would spend a lot of time developing, doing a needs assessment and developing long lists of needs, everything from major highway projects down to, simple sidewalks and everything in between. And, we try to prioritize everything sort of top to bottom and then present that list to the MPO board and some of our local elected boards. And they, look at it, and it was just too much to take in. And, furthermore, it probably didn't really reflect necessarily their priorities. So we sort of took a step back and decided we weren't going to do that anymore. What we were going to do was to sort of operate on more of a programmatic basis and say, well, this is these are the types of projects that we think are important, but we're going to let you decide, what's most important. Let's say for Hillsborough County or Temple Terrace or Plant City or whatever, and we will try to fit those within, these program categories to see how much of it we can fund. But in terms of the categories themselves, Johnny, do you want to talk a little bit about, how they're broken down in terms of generally into priorities?
Yeah, sure. To answer Amy's question first, I use a lot of different terminology to describe the buckets. You've probably heard all these words thrown around at some point in time. Funding buckets, performance categories, investment programs, they all pretty much mean the same thing, at least to me. And to answer Terrence's question, so based on feedback that we collected during the 2040 long-range transportation plan, and then again doing the 2045, the public told us that the most important investment area for them is state of good repair. So right off the top, we know that projects that are in need of funds for pavement resurfacing or bridge maintenance, those are going to elevate to the top. Right underneath that are Vision Zero projects like safety, and then smart cities and multimodal and everything else kind of comes underneath that. The things that we look at when we're trying to rank projects in each category. So as you know, like the most important category according to the public was state of good repair. That could include projects like pavement resurfacing, bridges, bus maintenance, any kind of project like that could fall under that category. So to rank them, we look at the condition of the pavement. Like if there's a road that needs to be repaired and it's totally torn up, that would probably be elevated toward the top, as opposed to a road that needs resurfacing but isn't so bad. We look at, to throw out like a technical term, pavement condition index, which is a numeric scale from 0 to 100. So if a jurisdiction says that they need money and the road is currently in a state of a 20 PCI, that would mean it's really bad. And if a jurisdiction said they need funding for a road that's a 60, of course the 20 would go ahead of that. When we're looking at safety projects like the Vision Zero program area, we look at fatalities, serious injuries, bike imped, whole host of things. I'm sure that you're familiar with most of the safety measures. We collect all that data and we try to compare them one-to-one, so that if there's a project on a corridor that has a huge number of fatalities, that would automatically mean that that project's going toward the top of the Vision Zero list. It can get a little weird when we look at some of the other program areas. Smart cities is a good example, and we know that we have some difficulties with that. Smart cities is the program area that looks at reducing congestion. It includes a lot of technologies, and some of these technologies are so cutting edge that we may not have data to support all of them. a good example that we've been talking about behind the scenes recently is that the city of Tampa was looking to prioritize a parking management system, like a technology that will allow parking garages to fill up more efficiently and for traffic coming out of the garages to flow in a better way. That's a really new technology, and we don't have data to analyze what the impact would be of that. So there's a little bit of an art involved. As much as we try to make it a straightforward, quantitative, mathematical process, there's a need for a little bit of art and finesse as well.
Understood. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so Terrence, just to recap on that, I feel like what you just said is that having some sort of information that we can communicate in advance on that topic would be helpful. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay.
Can I follow up, please?
Sure.
Also, what would capture, Johnny, what would capture possibly anything that's like revenue generating, you know, infrastructure that we put in place that's designed to actually possibly bring in, or I guess is, I don't know, expected to generate revenue in some sort?
I'm gonna let Rich I'm gonna let him follow up on this. I anticipate that a lot of the projects that fall into one of our 4 investment programs, the ones we've already mentioned, Smart Cities, State of Good Repair, Vision Zero, and Real Choices, they all probably generate a little bit of revenue. But the program area that really captures major projects that are going to facilitate economic growth are going to be in the major projects category. So the criteria to get included in that category would be like serving a certain amount of jobs, like a project that serves a business center that has X amount of employees. And there's some other criteria. I'll let Rich follow up from here.
Did we get feedback from the public on those, like how that fits into their priority?
Well, let me, if I could, answer the question in a couple of different ways. Johnny talked a little bit about what we call major projects for economic development. These are generally the larger, bigger ticket projects. So, interstate projects. If we ever got to, rail transit or BRT, that would probably fall into this category. It's one of the criteria that we use is does it serve a job cluster, what we used to call a key economic space, but it's basically, where we've got 5,000 or more jobs in one area. Downtown obviously is one of them. West Shore would be another. Maybe the university district would be a third. There's some others, MacDill Air Force Base, for example. Those are where jobs are concentrated. And we know there's a lot of trips going in and out. So people do weigh in on that. And, we do try to take their opinions into account. You may remember when we had the 2045 plan being developed, we went out to the public and we actually presented, broke the county into districts or quadrants and showed people, sort of what were some of the projects that could be funded in the long range plan. And we asked them to, vote, thumbs up or thumbs down. And we got a lot of feedback on that. But I will say it's not totally scientific. And, if I live in Brandon, I'm going to be looking for projects in the Brandon area. I'm probably going to give those a thumbs up, all other things being equal. So a lot depends on, who we hear from and what their needs are. But we do try to take that into account. Let me skip to just a couple of other slides here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you though, Rich. Thank you. I understand.
This is something that I don't know if anybody has ever asked this question, but I think people have inquired about maybe indirectly. And I think it's something that probably warrants a bit of explanation because it's not always abundantly clear when we bring the TIP to you. How do projects get in there to begin with? So starting from, sort of looking at the long range, we try to identify needs. That could be everything from safety related needs to safety, serving economic development to, maintenance needs or preserving the system. It's a long laundry list of potential needs. The ones that sort of float to the top, though, are the ones where we actually have a concept or, the embryo of a project, if you will. It might be nothing more than a line on a map or maybe a dot on the map that says we need to do something here. It could be, just to take an example from what's in the long range plan now, the rail crossing on US 41 just south of Causeway Boulevard. If you know where that is, that's long been a sore spot because we get trains, going into the port. Sometimes they're very slow and they're very long and traffic backs up. In fact, the track crosses Causeway Boulevard as well as US 41. And at times you get both crossings blocked and it's a real gridlock situation. So, what can we do about that? Well, the next, idea might be, well, let's elevate one or, have a grade separation. So you elevate the road over the tracks or maybe the tracks over the road, but it needs to be studied. That's kind of the next step. So you're taking a concept and seeing it, if it's feasible. If it's feasible, the next step might be to prioritize it. That's where the TIP priority list comes in. And that's really where you start to commit funding. If you look at the bottom set of arrows there, because as soon as you start to commit funding, then you get into, real dollars, resources. We might need more right-of-way, we might need dollars. Something needs to be spent in order for the project to happen. And that's usually, if there's federal dollars involved, it has to be in the TIP, the 5-year TIP. Then you move towards implementation. Typically for infrastructure, that involves some design work. If there's right-of-way needed, it could take a year or 2 or 3 to acquire that right-of-way. Excuse me. And then, construction needs to take place, and then it opens to service or operations. So it's a long timeline, and potentially could go longer than 20 years from the moment somebody conceives of a need to the time that it actually, there's a ribbon cutting. One other thing I would just mention is, the MPO is involved in the front end, but then it sort of our involvement tapers off as you get closer to implementation. The implementing agencies are more involved at the back end, obviously. They're the ones that are building or operating. The last arrow up there at the top where it says monitor performance, that's relatively new. That's something that we didn't always do, and the feds have started to put a big emphasis on, so what do we get out of these projects? And, are they delivering in the expected performance? So that's kind of a very short course on what is typically brought before the committees, including the CAC. Let me just skip to this one. This is just a picture of, some of the projects, well, actually all the projects that are in our long range plan today. And these are called cost feasible projects because we think we're going to have funding, or we did when the plan was adopted, to support these over the next 20, 25 years. And then the TIP itself is a subset of those long range plan projects. It lists our priorities and all the projects for the next 5 years. It also includes the local projects. They're broken out into separate sections. So there's a section for Hillsborough County, for the city of Tampa, city of Temple Terrace, and Plant City. We don't typically prioritize we do not prioritize their projects. Those are in there for informational purposes, but we do want to list them and take note of them because sometimes they can influence, what we end up funding with the federal and state dollars. Excuse me. And this is just a picture of the first 5 years of the long range plan when it was adopted. So this is kind of similar to what you might see in the TIP. And we have a number of ways we can view that or depict that. There's a static map in the TIP document itself, but there's also an interactive map that's online that you can actually go click on some of these lines and get some project information. Amy, again, I think I've monopolized the conversation here, so if there's questions.
I think this is good because, I wasn't sure how much of a primer everyone needed, but I feel like, this is good because we need to understand what we're trying to make more clear. So I did want to reach out to Carolyn and Beatrice to see if either one of you had any questions about the tip or anything that's presented so far, things that you may or may not understand or want to dig a little deeper in.
This is Carolyn. I do want to dig a little bit deeper in. I don't have any questions right now. It's very interesting.
Okay. Beatrice, how about you?
Yes, I was going to say, right now, I think I'm good at listening. This is my first, I feel like I've only had one MPO CAC meeting. So I'm good with listening right now and just absorbing as much as I can.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Hey, Amy?
Sure, yes.
This is David. A quick question. As far as when will we start getting, I think that we start getting that information soon on what's going to be in the tip and all that. I just wasn't sure of the exact date. Do you know when, or Rich, do you know when we'll get that information out?
I'm going to let Johnny answer that question as a project manager for the TIP this year.
Yeah, I asked to bring it to the CAC twice, once to give you a very preliminary view of it, and then again before it's adopted in June. So you all will have 2 shots at taking a look at it and asking whatever questions you want. I think we're bringing it to you all for the first time on May 5th, and then again on June 2nd. And then it's going to be going to the public hearing on June 9th.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, those are the established dates for the CAC and the MPO meetings. Those are our regular monthly meetings. We may or may not have time to, really have an open discussion or delve into the guts of the TIP. So there, as Amy mentioned at the start of the meeting, we may need to schedule sort of an evening workshop And since we're all very used to virtual meetings at this point, I think that'll be an easy one for people to attend.
I agree. I was just going to ask and Mr. Wong let me know if we can get some type of preliminary, just I guess roadmap or just information on kind of what's going into the tip or what you're working on, just so that we can have a little bit more time to adjust or absorb the information, and then maybe do some research on our own, so that way we can have more, educated and worthwhile discussions during our meeting going into it, in addition to the additional meetings that we'll have. Is that possible?
I think that short answer is that yes, it'll be possible to get you something that's in maybe 80% draft form. So the CAC agenda for May goes out on the 28th of April. I'm probably going to need most of the month of April to actually get the document in a good place where it's able to be reviewed by you all. But you'll have it at the very latest by the 28th. Again, that'll be in draft form. And then when I come to your regular meeting on May 5th, I would estimate it'll be like approximately 80% done. Whatever comments and feedback you all give me, I'll be able to take the rest of May to clean it up. And then when I bring it back to you June 2nd, should be a near final, the version should be near final.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
So Johnny, I have a follow-up question to that. So when you give that information, it's really heavy content. It's the projects that are going to be part of the tip. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Okay. And so, the information that we had talked about earlier, where, we kind of take a deeper dive into the prioritization process, how it's ranked against the, there's 3 terms for it, but I'll use performance categories. And then, ranked within the performance categories as well as the major ticket. Is any of that part of it, or it's really just focused on content? Like
Yeah, so in reviewing the tip, I've been looking at it for the past 6 weeks or so, thinking of ways that it can be improved. I think that there's a huge opportunity to make it a lot more clear. So I'm glad that you all shared your issues with it with me, because most of the things that you identified are also things I identified. I think maybe one of the biggest changes we could make is making it clear that the tip is a performance-based document. We talk about performance measures in it. We have the priority list. I think the element that's a little bit lost in translation is how our performance measures and the way that we evaluate projects leads into the projects being ranked in a certain way. And I think Beth and Rich chose me to manage the tip this year because they like the way I explain complex topics in a simple way. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that everyone totally understands what's going on, that it's very clear. If you understand what the performance measure program is and does, then it's super easy to understand the tip. If that part isn't clear to you, you might as well be reading Latin or Arabic or something like that. So I'm going to try to make it very, very simple, make it concise, and hopefully everything goes well.
So, part of what I was hoping this committee could do is help you with that. So it's maybe not all on you. So with that in mind, how do we as a committee help you achieve that?
I wouldn't mind, if you're open to it, checking back in with you and asking some follow-up questions. At the moment, we're working on deleting a lot of the unnecessary fluff language that makes the tip seem way more intimidating than it actually is. So my goals for the tip are to abbreviate it considerably, use simple language, nix a lot of the jargon, and make sure that everyone understands this is a performance-based document. And Amy, I know that you're great with design, so if you're open to it, I could check in with you and run a couple ideas past you to get your thoughts.
Of course. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, when we bring it to you in May, like I mentioned, it's only going to be 80% done. So there's going to be a lot of room to continue improving. So I might seek to get most of my feedback from you all during the regular CAC meeting. But other than that, I'm kind of like, I've been taking notes on everything that I've heard you all say. And, you know, I hear what David is saying, that it's very intimidating for new people. That makes me think that it needs to be simple, use simple language. I hear people saying they're not really sure how projects are ranked, what the performance criteria are, what's the connection between the LRTP, TIP, and UPWP. Those are, at least those things are what I hope to cover in the presentation and in the document. And as I get more feedback from folks, I'll address everything in the presentation.
And just a quick follow-up question to that, I'm sorry. Sean, is it possible? Because I think, and to Amy's point, we want to be that group to help you do that, but also, you know, whether it's you that comes to the CAC meeting in April, based on this meeting, and maybe we have another one prior to April, so that individuals understand, or other members understand, what they're looking for when we get the tip package, and how to go through it and understand it. I think that would be helpful too. So I hope, and just to Amy's point, I hope what we can partially do here is get ready to educate the board, or members of the CAC board, and ahead of time, to prepare them based on, you know, a couple meetings that we may have between now and then. So if we can do that in April, to say, hey, look, this is what you may be looking out for, or what you can look out for, would be helpful.
Yeah,
I'll throw out a suggestion and let me know what you think of it. So when you all meet in April 7th, the document won't be anywhere near ready. Like, we won't have anything to share at that time. But I was thinking maybe at the end of that meeting, we have like a brief update under new business, talking about what the elements of the tip are, why they're important, and we could kind of explain to the committee members what they should be looking at. Does that kind of fit the bill, what you were speaking about, David?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So that'll be perfect. I think that'll be very helpful as well.
Yeah,
go ahead.
sorry, Amy. I just wanted to make one quick suggestion, and it may or may not be what you all are looking for, but you know, the TIP, if you were to print it out, which I hope nobody ever does, but it's like a couple hundred pages, and it's you know, page after page of projects. It's a little mind-numbing, even for people like us who have to work with it every day. But I think there are ways maybe to not simplify necessarily, but help identify two things. One is, you know, what are the major projects that are funded in the TIP? And, you know, that's a little subjective, but I think we can probably at least get most of them identified for you. The other is, you know, what major changes have taken place between last year and this year? You know, there may be some new projects that warrant mention. There may be some projects that have changed somehow. We do that in the document anyway. I just think that they're kind of hidden, or, you know, buried in the pages. And, you know, Sarah has been pretty good about extracting that information. and bringing it to you all, usually in some sort of PowerPoint presentation. And that's oftentimes what we've been going over in that evening workshop. But you know, there's probably, I'm just guessing, but maybe 200 or 300 individual projects, of which maybe only 10% you know, are really significant in terms of either being new or maybe represent a major project that you all should be aware of. And I think we can certainly try to boil it down to that and maybe talk a little bit about those in detail. But to the point that Johnny's making, I think it's great if we you know, tried to line it out for the rest of the committee, you know, what it is that we think is important or they think is important, and then we'll try to shoot for that target.
Go ahead, Terrence.
I think it kind of rolls into this whole thing. I just wanted to know, you know, and since Dr. Wong's working on this, you know, how do you absorb the, you know, like I guess a smaller project that may have been on the list, or how do you identify projects that are all throughout the list that may be represented by a new or a larger project? Like, is that a scrub that's done through the process? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah, I think I understand. In reality, there may be projects on the list that stay there for a very, very long time. The jurisdictions that submit priority projects, they kind of understand what our process is, and so they're more likely to submit projects that they believe will have a major impact so that they can be competitive for funding. When they submit projects to get added to the priority list, they don't want them to just sit on the table and die on the shelf. You know, they don't want them to be there for 10 years knowing that they're never going to get funding, because in those 10 years that they just remain on the priority list, if they want them to get a chance at being funded, they have to continue updating applications, and that's a lot of paperwork. In DOT, you know, they spend a lot of time evaluating projects as well to be candidates for funding. So, you know, Rich has been here for longer, so he can tell you about specific examples, but what I've heard in conversations from the jurisdiction or with the jurisdictions is that they're trying to select priority projects that really do have a good shot at getting funded within a short time frame.
But also, I just mean like just the cleanup of the list. So say 2 years ago, there's a road widening project, but then there's a major intersection project that will widen the roads. Like, how do you know, catch that and clean up the list?
Yeah, every year we meet with the jurisdictions. We have like an internal meeting with them, and we ask them, we go through the list of their projects that are on the list, and we ask them, hey, do you think that this is still a priority? Do you still need this because this corridor may have changed for whatever reason? And so each year they submit their wish list to or I shouldn't say wish list. They go through a process with their governing board, ask the members of the board if the projects are still priorities. If they're not, they can get pulled off. If there are new priorities, they might add projects. So that's one element of the cleanup that happens every year.
Let me also see if I can just take Terrence's example about, let's say, an intersection that is proposed for improvement that may be part of a larger corridor, let's say, that, you know, needs work. So I think what you're asking is, you know, do we consolidate or, you know, try to rationalize to make sure, projects are happening that are really the most important, strip out the things that are less important, or maybe, look at where there might be some overlap or duplication. Is that what you're asking?
Pretty much, yes. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why we try to start from, is it consistent with the long range plan? Because, what's in the long range plan has already gone through that process of, vetting so that things are not overlapped or duplicating. It may be, for example, that we don't have, and this is very typical, we don't have sufficient funding to do everything. So, you may look at a project like this one down here on Big Bend Road. The real bottleneck there is the ramps to the interchange. Those are going to happen first, because that's sort of the linchpin to this whole transportation problem. But you see that there's segments to the east and the west of Big Bend and I-75 interchange that are proposed for expansion.
Mhm.
And that's a big ticket project when you put it all together. So that's going to wait in line and probably happen later on. So those are the types of things that we are sensitive to. It doesn't very often happen that a jurisdiction is, let's say, a county or a city proposes something that we think is redundant or not necessary because it's already been funded somewhere else. Occasionally it happens, but I'd say it's rare.
Yeah, thanks both of you. Appreciate it.
All right, so to kind of start winding down a little, the one last question that I have for you all is, so we're looking at this map, the first 5 years, right? This is an example. On the legend, it gives you very specific information. But is there other information that it would be useful to overlay on the map? I think when I proposed the committee, I had mentioned, areas of disadvantaged communities, or different demographics as far as where these projects are occurring. Is that what kind of information might also be useful in a view like this to you all, if you have any thoughts on that? Does that make sense? I know last year that information people had asked those specific questions last year, so that's why I was curious. Sorry, go ahead, David.
No, no worries. I think for me, yes, that was me. For me, I think demographics are important. When you look at the growth areas, versus South County versus the northeast side of the county, or the northwest side of the county, and understand where these projects are and how they will relieve a lot of the headaches that a lot of the growth is occurring in the area, I think is important. I don't know if this is a GIS map, but obviously overlaying some of the growth rates that have been there, or just high growth areas, shouldn't be too difficult, so that people can understand, okay, well, if we do have this Big Bend interstate project, and we see that there's X amount of people there and the growth is happening, there's a huge amount of growth happening, well, that may provide a little bit more context to the people who don't live in the South County area. So I think what we do sometimes with some of these projects is, yeah, we need to vote on them, but if I don't live in a certain part of that county, I may not know what's going on there. So demographics will provide a picture of kind of what's going on to help our members understand why, you know, projects are happening in addition to what you guys have mentioned before regarding the project. So I just think demographics would be helpful. And such the population growth, demographics along those lines.
Any other ideas, comments?
So, Amy, I know you're familiar with our interactive TIP map, the one that's online.
Yes.
But I would venture to, I mean, I just asked the other members, has anybody else looked at that?
Say again, Rich, I'm sorry.
So there is a TIP project viewing map that's available online. Has anybody looked at that?
I don't think so. I've just looked at the document and all the stuff that's in the actual tip.
Yeah, so I think, Amy, that's what you were asking about, right? What other information could be put into that TIP viewing map that might be useful to people?
Yeah, that and also in the presentation in general.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, because I do know, I remember those questions coming up, so I was just trying to be proactive a little.
Right.
I'm familiar with the map, Rich.
Okay.
I just looked at it.
I would just ask if we could add more to that. The map is limited, and when you look at the demographics and things like that, I do know it's a GIS map that's there, but I guess that people can click on. I guess that's my question is add years to that map so they get better picture of what's going on.
David, I only caught about half of what you said. I don't know if anybody else heard. You're breaking up. You still with us, David? No, I think we might have lost him.
Says he's self-muted. There we go.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, there you are. So I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying with the TIP map that Rich mentioned, if we can add a couple more variables or layers so that people can click on and get a better understanding of it. Not everybody will have, obviously, different GIS or online ArcGIS capabilities, but that's where I'm getting at to Amy's point. We need to be able to present a better picture, or at least discuss that in the meetings and let people understand why, you know, the demographics are there to help paint a picture. And I was just wondering if that could be added to the map, the TIP map that's there, or just be able to toggle between different layers. I hope you guys got that.
Yeah, we heard you.
Yeah, and Priya has put a link to the online so-called TIP tool into the chat box. So if you have a chance later on, you can look at that.
All right. So kind of, I guess the wrap up here is, you know, what is the focus of our work going to be and what are the next steps? So it sounded to me, Johnny, like you are intending to do some of this work anyway. And so again, I guess the question would be, how can we as a committee what can we do to help? you know, with the shared language, you know, it's showing information in a slightly different way to give a bigger picture. Like, is there anything that we can do there to help you, or is this something that you had already planned on doing anyway? I guess I just don't want to recreate the wheel, I guess is what I'm trying to think, because I respect everybody's time.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, I did plan on doing several of the things that I heard you all give me feedback on. Simplicity, making sure that the prioritization methodology is clear, making sure that folks understand why projects are ranked in a certain way and why. So yeah, we planned on making the tip, committing to a major overhaul of the tip this year. So a lot of the stuff that I heard you all give me feedback on was already underway. Depending on how much time you have at the April meeting, they always run long, but at the end, I may have some additional questions just to get more feedback from folks on what parts of the tip are most helpful to them. You know, because if we're going to be making improvements to certain sections, I want to make sure we're focusing on the ones that are most used. If we have time, I wouldn't mind dedicating like 5 or 10 minutes to a Q&A session.
Okay, so that's with our larger group or just us?
Larger group, and if this group wants to get together, or if we can get this group together maybe once more just to go over some of the changes, and then you let me know if you think any tweaking is necessary, I'm totally open to that.
Okay, so really the next step is to have the Q&A with the larger group, and then schedule another follow-up session with us to kind of go over, you know, I imagine, you know, like you said, the things that we brought up in this meeting will kind of echo in the next, and then we'll take that back, talk about it, and then maybe figure out if there is additional help that you need. I feel like that might be the next step. Is that right?
Yeah, just serving as a sounding board helps a whole lot.
Okay.
I've been attacking it, but looking at it through my own personal lens, and in reading it, you know, even me, who's been an employee here for a few years, I found it kind of difficult to understand. So I'm trying to simplify it in a way that makes sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to you all too. But just providing advice and being a sounding board, letting me know if I'm moving in the right direction would be a tremendous help.
Okay.
So I'm hearing that Johnny is proposing to talk about this under unfinished business at your next meeting, which is April 7th, and hear what the rest of the CAC has to say, and then sort of take that into account, and then propose some changes or simplifications, clarifications to this subcommittee before we start presenting the draft TIP in earnest. Is that kind of the game plan that I'm hearing, Amy?
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not on mute. Yeah, that's basically what I heard as well.
Okay. One thing I was going to suggest, because we won't actually have the new TIP until, you know, towards the end of April, beginning of May, but and as Johnny said, it won't be completely finished product at that point, maybe 80%. But we can certainly talk about the list of priority projects. Either if we don't have the new one completely developed, at least we can go over the existing list, what's in the TIP today. I don't think the methodology is going to change too much, but certainly some, you know, there might be some some new projects added to it when we develop the new TIP. So, I mean, that's just food for thought.
Okay.
Is there a potential to do a subcommittee review like Monday the 3rd before the meeting on the 5th?
You're talking May 5th?
Yes. We have the May 5th meeting, like the full body, right? The full CAC.
Yes.
So from what I'm hearing, the tip should be, mostly completed during the end of April, and then we can look at it possibly as a subcommittee before it hits the larger committee on the 5th.
I think that's sent out on the 28th, right, Rich? Is because that's the Wednesday.
That was Johnny's timetable, yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to hold you to that, Johnny.
I asked for that punishment, actually.
Okay.
And it's good. We want to, to Amy's point, we want to help you to actually prioritize. I think if instead of, I don't know if it's all you, Dr. Wong, you know what I'm saying? Like, here's Dr. Wong's list, obviously based on input that you receive. But I think the subcommittee is willing to help you with the actual list. And then it makes it easier for us, like when you come to full committee, hey, we reviewed this stuff looks sound, we believe it's good to go. Of course, you have they'll have their own questions and thoughts, but at least coming from the subcommittee, we have already reviewed it and can say that the citizens have had input into this list.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I think that's a great idea. It's not just me, to be clear. Vashaka is also on my team, and Rich and Beth been helping a lot. But yeah, I really want to bring it to the committee at least twice. I wanted to have it prepared by May 5th and then again in June, because it seems each year when we bring it to the CAC, conversation just goes on for hours, and I think it would be much simpler to break it down into 2 sessions. That way everyone gets a chance to speak, rather than just having like 1 or 2 issues dominate the entire conversation.
And if I may, to that point, Dr. Wong, and I think what would be a good idea is if we could work as a sounding board for you, and then potentially if we have maybe we can do an earlier meeting for the CAC members to kind of just go over some of the information, because I agree with you, it's hard to get through the tip with so many questions. And then some of the questions I think come from just not a lack of understanding. So if we can head that off, maybe provide a little bit of information, maybe answer some questions about the TIP, and then hold some type of members meeting so that the other members can maybe ask questions about the tip prior to getting the first copy or the first edition. I think that's going to be helpful with that May 5th meeting when you come and you start discussing, because otherwise you're going to get bombarded with 50 different questions, some of which could have been answered prior to, with just a better understanding going into it. So I was hoping that we could actually, maybe that could be the second function of this group, is maybe an educational force for the committee members ahead of time.
I'll be totally flexible. Whenever is a good time for this subcommittee to get back together. The first version of it that you'll have will be on April 28th. So if you all want to meet on the 29th, 30th, 3rd, or the 4th, I can definitely clear out some time on my schedule for us to get back together. The only thing that can't be moved on those days is the TAC. So I'll be presenting it to the TAC on the 3rd at 1:30. Other than that, my schedule can be somewhat flexible.
How do you all feel about meeting before our 5th? Do you want to meet like I don't know, even the same day, like just holding it, meet after the CAC. I don't know if that's a good idea, or if the evening is better for most people.
I would probably, go ahead, Terrence.
Oh, this is Rich. I was going to say, I think the proposal was to meet sometime around May 3rd, which would be a couple of days before your May 5th regular meeting. And that would be as a subcommittee to sort of take a first look and give Johnny some feedback on both the content and the format of the TIP.
I guess, Johnny, would that give you enough time to, if we had feedback for all the, because I know we're not the only committee that you give this presentation to, so I just want to make sure that you have enough time.
Yeah, the document will be ready by the 28th. The week between the 28th and the 5th, I'll probably be working on the PowerPoint. So if we meet on the 3rd, and I can just give you a very quick summary of what I plan to cover in the presentation, and then maybe you can give me feedback on that. That would be a big help.
Okay.
Specifically to answer your question, like, yeah, I'll have everything pretty much done by the time that you're free to meet.
So how does May 3rd look for everyone? And is it evening time good, or?
Yeah, I think that would probably work well for me.
It's a Sunday? No, it's a Monday. That's right. Okay.
What time
Okay.
works best for folks? When we say evening, I mean, that could be 5, that could be 6, could be 5:30. What's good?
I think 6. I mean, I'm pretty flexible, so if anybody else has like solid obligations, I'd work around that.
And this is Carolyn. I'm just as flexible. Just let me know and I can make it happen.
Great.
Yeah, 6 p.m. works for me.
6 p.m. is going to be tough for me. So if 5 would probably be better because I would have to do a hard stop at 6.
5 o'clock would be okay with me too.
Yep.
Same.
All right.
Works for me.
So our next meeting is May 3rd, 5 p.m., where we will give Dr. Wong some feedback. And I think unless there's anything else, we can go on with our days.
All right, cool.
Oh, sorry. One more if I can. Just equity items. Is there any way to call it out when, like on the list, things that should be helping to improve equity, things that through your research or the intent of the project, even if it's not the direct intent, even, it's a partial, a nice side effect that we can call it out and show where we're considering it and it's improving. I would definitely like that on there or represented somehow. It's worth it. We care about it. Most of the organizations, presenters and stuff come talk to us and it's incorporated. We know it is, but it would be nice to put it out there and call it out.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking more about equity in your next meeting. I think there's 2 parts to that question, or maybe 2 responses to that question. One is, what projects are impacting, some of the disadvantaged communities in the Hillsborough County, and then secondly, what projects are, or what would be the benefits, I guess, of those projects for the people that live in those communities. much of the equity and non-discrimination plan work is sort of still in development, but I think part of it is listening to the people that live in those communities and hearing from them first and then trying to respond. You know, that might be with projects, it might be with programs, other services. So it's, I don't know if we're gonna, you know, hit the target, you know, on the first try, but I think we have to keep at that. It might take several years before we actually can answer that question with any precision. But if you don't start, you'll never get to it.
All right, cool. Thanks for organizing all of this, and thanks everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Amy, is there anything else before we adjourn?
No, I think that's everything I had on my list. So thanks for your time and participation and for organizing.
Well, thank you for proposing it. And Amy, I think when we get to talking about this at the next regular meeting, I think I'll prompt Bill Roberts to ask you to give a little summary, or, you know, maybe a preface to what Johnny's going to talk about.
Okay, that sounds great.
All right, wonderful.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Everybody have a good
Thanks. Take
weekend.
care.
Thank you, Priya. You can stop now.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.